Wherever you're listening in the world, it's a pleasure to welcome you to IsraelCast, the podcast powered by Jewish National Fund USA, your voice in Israel. I'm Stephen Shalowitz, reminding you that for over 120 years, Jewish National Fund USA has been the premier philanthropic movement for the land and people of Israel. While best known for planting trees in Israel, JNF USA contributes to Israeli life in so many ways, including community development in the Negev and the Galilee, preservation of heritage sites, supporting people with disabilities, and connecting high school and college students to Israel. To learn more and to see how you can contribute, do visit jnf.org. Once again, visit jnf.org. Plus, if you haven't done so already, we'd love it if you subscribed, rated, and reviewed us, 5 stars, of course, wherever you get your podcasts. We'd love it too if you shared the show within your orbit. And I know you're going to want to share this episode in particular as we welcome back to the program Yuval David. Now, Yuval is an award-winning actor, host, director, and filmmaker, and a leading Jewish LGBTQ activist. He directs and writes short and full-length films, documentaries, web series, as well as digital and TV content. As an actor, he's played leading roles in film, TV, theater, web, and digital media, as well as voiceovers. By the way, we're going to be talking about the mega hit he's currently in. Yuval has won multiple local Emmys for hosting one actor short. He uses his creative work as a vehicle for the greater good on behalf of highly respected U.S. and international organizations. And on top of that, I'm proud to call him a friend. We welcome back Yuval David to the program. Yuval, always lovely to chat with you. Thanks once again for joining us here on IsraelCast.
Stephen, joining you on IsraelCast is an honor. It's a pleasure, but truly joining you anywhere is an honor and a pleasure. You have this reputation that preceded you even before I met you of being a true mensch, of being this authentic, genuine person who truly cares and truly loves what you do. What you say is what you do, and the way you present yourself is so inclusive, which really speaks to me because I'm an inclusion activist who practices radical acceptance, and I love to see the people who actually do that. You bring everybody to the table. You share your space with so many people, and in this battle, let's say actually in this war that we're in for the existence of the Jewish people, it is soldiers and fighters and activists and advocates like you who make sure that we will be able to say Am Yisrael Chai because you collaborate, because you share in the process.
Right back at you. And thank you so much for that. Really, Yuval, I appreciate it. Listen, there are so many topics to discuss when Yuval David is in the house, and I really want to hopscotch through a number of them. And the first is really about social media, because you have been very active on multiple platforms. And I'd really love it if you shared sort of your advice on yours truly, as well as all of our listeners around the world, on having them use their voice on social media. Any best practices, thoughts? Where should people go with that? How should people approach using social media, Yuval?
I mean, am I the right person to answer this question? I just got permanently banned from TikTok because I dared use the words Zionist, Israel, and Jewish people.
And that's the world we're living in right now,
that's
sadly.
the world we're living in.
Yeah.
Look, what I share on social media very much is a reflection of who I am and what I do. I don't have this alternate persona. I don't have a public persona that is different than my private persona. Of course, I don't share everything about my life on social media. Yet, whether I choose to say so or people remind me, and not always in the kindest of ways, I'm a Jew first. I'm a proud Jew. It is the most important part of my identity and my intersectional identity for me. Yet social media has provided platforms for those who hate Jews, who are against Jews, who are anti-Jews, whether they call themselves anti-Israel, anti-Zionist, or even just plain old anti-Semitic. I get reminded of this regularly. So with all of the things that I do on social media, I receive thousands of hate messages every single day across all social media platforms from people who hate me, who hate us. Yet I get so many beautiful messages from people who thank me or appreciate what I say or have expressed that they feel like I'm saying the exact same things that they're thinking, or that I inspired them and motivate them to lead a life of activism and advocacy. So let the haters hate. But if we can all empower other people, Jews, our allies, and our future friends to speak up, that is how we will be able to say Am Yisrael Chai. That is how we will win this war for our existence, even if we continue to lose battles right and left.
There's a lot to unpack there. And the first thing is I want to ask you about the whole TikTok thing. So you use the word Zionist or Zionism, and then what happened? They sent you a notice to say, sorry, we're banning you because you used the word Zionist?
My posts, my social media posts on TikTok that uh, use the word Zionist, Israel, and even sometimes just Jewish people, those are posts that were flagged for being in violation of community guidelines. I don't know how they're in violation, because the people who are calling death to Israel, those posts were still up on TikTok. The people who refer to themselves as being anti-Zionists, those posts were still up. So dare I practice whataboutism? How is it that I'm not able to share about pride and celebration of Jewish identity and support of Israel and Zionism, because I'm a supporter of democratic values, of democracies, of self-actualization of indigenous people? So how is it that I was not able, and I was deplatformed because I shared these things? But what about the people who are posting things about other people's, and those posts remain, or the people who are posting against us and those posts remain?
Listen, TikTok, in my view, is an absolute sewer. I am not on TikTok because I don't want the Chinese Communist Party to get my information and to have my details. And I'm saying this as someone who was educated as a China specialist, lived in China for 7 years. I mean, you
Where
can't
you
get,
hosted a radio
well,
show.
I hosted it in Singapore, actually. But I was on radio several times in China. But I mean, I lived there many years. I'm very familiar with China and I know the way they operate. And there's no way on God's green earth that I'm going to open up a TikTok account because I don't want them accessing my information. And so I say that very publicly because that's what they're doing with all of our information. It's really just as a medium for them to get even more control over us. And I don't want them to do that. I want to have control over my own life. When we talk about hate and the hate that you're getting, in a way, though, it's almost a badge of honor, isn't it?
Hmm.
Did you ever look at it that way?
There are people who have said that. They said, oh, if you have all of these haters and internet and social media trolls who are rearing their ugly heads, that it means you're doing something right. I'm not trying to empower the haters. I'm not trying to empower evil people. I'm not creating content for them.
Yeah.
I'm creating content for our community, for our allies who are part of our community, and for our future allies who I'm trying to inspire, how to inspire the silent majority.
And what I'm hearing from you is that the advice is to be proudly Jewish on social media and to express that on all social media platforms. In other words, don't shy away from it.
Very true. Don't shy away from your identity, from celebrating who you are, from
Mhm.
speaking up about what you believe in. We have too many people. The vocal minority is much louder than the silent majority. We're seeing the extremists speak up much louder and with much more consistency than those who support the values that anybody who truly cares about civil rights, social justice, and human rights. Um, we're seeing this terrible imbalance in the loudest voices.
And so, Yuval, what do you say to those people that say, I'm afraid to go on social media, or I don't want to go on social media, or I don't want to post because I really don't know if I can handle all of the hate and the vitriol that will come my way?
To the people who don't want to be as public with their social media posts, you can still share your social media posts amongst your family and friends. You don't have to have a public account. but you still have followers. You still have real life people who are connected to you who are on social media.
Mhm.
So even if you're only trying to affect, influence, inspire, educate, motivate your real life connections, then that is vital activism. That is vital advocacy for your causes, your initiatives, you, your family, your friends, your community, the people that you're fighting for. I do this on major platforms. I'm on the news almost every single day as a news commentator. I post across all social media platforms other than TikTok. uh, I'm on a speaking and advocacy tour across the United States and Canada regularly, flying everywhere in order to do just that: entertain, uplift, inspire, motivate, and activate people to do what is right. I do this on massive platforms. Not everybody's good at doing that. Not everybody wants to do that. Not everybody's able to do that. But we all have a platform. What
Yeah,
is your platform, and
and
how can you use it for the greater good?
And building on that is sharing information within your community so it empowers other people. And some of those other folks might be the ones that might be more comfortable to go out there in social media, right? So in other words, it's also feeding them information and educating other people. Um, you've been in Israel on and off over the last several months, and
We
we
even
should,
bumped into each other on the street, which was
wasn't that the
one of my
craziest?
favorite, one of my favorite, just momentary like delight. One of my favorite moments of this momentary delight while in Israel, because I truly do respect you and admire you, and you are my friend, and I like you, and you share so much great energy. And being in Israel, where I'm there quite regularly for advocacy and activism initiatives and for work. Um, it's been tough. It's been being in the mud, in the trenches, in the trauma. And when I bumped into you on the street and we had this hug and this like
It was the
just
most random thing.
so random, and it just was uplifting and gave me that extra bit of energy for the day. So that was a wonderful thing.
It really was. And, I've learned in life there's no such thing as random,
Mm.
right? There really isn't. So I wasn't even going to walk down that street. It was about 7 o'clock or so at night. It was dark and you were on the other side and I saw you and you were going to a wedding, right?
I was going to a wedding, yeah, which
Yeah.
was
In the middle
which
of
was
all of this, right?
which was
You were
I know.
you were going to a wedding. So I was going to say, so you've been in Israel on and off. And we should share with our listeners that we are recording this episode on April 15th, tax day 2024, and it's going to go up in, I believe it's May 1st. So certainly the world can do 12,000 somersaults from now until then. And so if it is doing those somersaults and we don't get to those somersault topics, you, our dear listeners, will definitely understand why. But I bring up the fact that you have been in Israel multiple times, backwards and forwards. You're now currently here in the United States. And I'm just wondering if you've noticed changes, Yuval, in Israel on the street. And if you can share a little bit about that, because I was there in January, I was there for 3 weeks and I haven't been back since. But I'm just wondering if you can talk about any changes that you've noticed during your time there.
Yeah, there are many changes that I've been noticing every single time I'm in Israel. I was there for most of March, most of January, all of December. I was I'm in Israel what seems like every 2 to 3 months these days, and
And you're there for extended periods. It's not
for
like you're
extended
just
periods.
flying in and flying out.
No, it's always hard for me to leave Israel. I've lived in the United States my entire life. I'm a dual citizen of the United States and Israel. Yet I've always been a resident of the United States, and very proud as an American Jew, proud of my American identity and my American activism, and of the opportunities and my efforts that I've had here in the United States. I've never felt more uncomfortable as a Jew in America than I have since October 7th. And that is a terrible feeling. I also think that that is an embarrassment to the United States. No American should feel uncomfortable living in this country because of their identity. And there are many peoples who have felt that. I have felt that throughout my whole life, where I knew that I was part of this marginalized minority of Jewish people in the United States, the small percentage that of the population that we are in America. And there always has been anti-Semitism. And I've been active as a Jewish activist and in the battle against anti-Semitism for most of my life, actually. I've never felt the discomfort at the levels that I do now. Um, and that's a sad thing. So I feel more comfortable in Israel, which is probably why I end up extending my stays and staying there a lot longer, and not wanting to come back to the United States is a challenging feeling, because I love America, right? I love America. It's a special country, and we have so much to do to make this country the country that it's supposed to be, the country that it can be, by focusing on the values we believe in.
Well, America is definitely a work in progress.
For sure.
However, um, I think that we've taken a huge step backwards. I mean, I lived overseas from 1989 to 2005. And when I returned in 2005, the America of that year was fundamentally different than when I left it. And in many ways, I don't think it was for the better. And
Yeah,
so I've actually seen this digression here in the United States, certainly
absolutely.
since I've come back, and it's just really distressing for someone who really does love this country and whose grandfathers came to this country to build a better life, and they did. And I shudder to think, if they were alive today, what they would make of it. But going back to Israel, I'm just
Yeah.
wondering,
The
what sort
changes
of
that I've
changes,
noticed. Yeah.
yeah, have you noticed changes?
The changes that I have noticed in Israel upon every visit are those that deal with the processing of trauma.
Mm.
Israel and Israelis are not yet in PTSD. There is no post trauma. We didn't have time to mourn the victims. We are at war. We're at war when we didn't choose to be at war. We didn't want to be at war, but the war has been thrust upon us. We have to be in the defensive. We need to defend and protect, to the point that ultimately we have to be in an offensive position in order to fight against those who want to kill us. Honestly, trying to kill us, not just commit a genocide against the Jews, which Hamas has declared and Hezbollah has declared and Palestinian Islamic Jihad has declared and Iran has declared, and so many people of trying to commit genocide of Jewish people. They're also aiming to practice historiocide, to erase our history, and ethnocide, to practice ethnic cleansing. So the changes that I'm seeing in Israel are the challenges of how to handle the trauma. We speak about achdut, we speak about togetherness, we see the Israeli flags everywhere, we see the far left people in Israel also fighting for the battle of existence alongside with the far right people. And we're still seeing people argue with each other, like always in Israel. The 3 Jews, 5 opinions philosophy is perfectly represented in Israel. What I notice is the continued struggle to understand how to continue with life while hostages are still being held, while we don't know what their situation is.
I'm glad you brought that up, because it's this notion of moving on with life, um, despite the fact that the hostages are still there. There's this duality, and I don't have a question in particular, Yuval, but one of the things that I noticed when I was there, and it was Shabbat, it was Saturday, and I was in Tel Aviv. I was in Jerusalem for Shabbos, and then I was also in Tel Aviv. But and you go down to the beach and you see people dancing and you see them playing volleyball, and life goes on, and people need to blow off steam. Yet there's the weight of what's
Right.
going on in Gaza. And I'm just wondering if you can address that, because the Israeli psyche is one of, we need to live. and we need to move on with our lives.
Yeah. Moving on and moving forward
Yeah.
doesn't mean to put on blinders or pretend like things didn't happen. It's about how do we still allow ourselves to live, to breathe, to try to do well for ourselves and for our communities and to celebrate life. How do we still have a wedding? How do people still get born? How do we celebrate birthdays? How do we celebrate holidays? All of these questions are real questions. And it doesn't mean that we erase it. It means we try to still live our lives as fully as we can, because we know that there are people who can't. And because we know that people fight and die for our ability to live our lives fully. It's in Israel, especially since October 7th, I often describe it as feeling all of the emotions in the course of one day. It's pretty extreme. And Stephen, you know, because you've experienced it as
Yeah.
well. In one day, you will experience tremendous grief, sadness, trauma, fear, anger, and happiness, and delight, and togetherness, and community. And it's it just feels like that's what real life is. And going back to a different country where people are not experiencing that, or who are able to put their mask on and hide the negative things and brush things up under the carpet, that doesn't feel like real life.
I want to build on something because I also feel that if you don't live your life, then the terrorists have won.
Mm-hmm.
And um, at the end of October, I had a long planned trip to Antarctica, the Falklands, and South Georgia Island. I think I might have mentioned that to you. And I almost canceled it because I wasn't in the mood, the right frame of mind. It was only a couple weeks after October 7th. And I decided to go ahead with the trip because I thought to myself, if I don't, that means the terrorists won. They want to terrorize me and they want me to have my life disrupted because of their savageness. And I thought to myself, this is going to be a better victory if I go and I experience what I want to experience versus not going and having them win.
Another reason I support your saying that is because you do practice activism and advocacy. You do share the narratives of our people. You do support our community and those people and the organizations that are trying to create an impact. So if you were just traveling around the world and doing nothing in support of, in defense of, and fighting for our people, I would probably have a comment there. But the fact that you, Stephen, do so much, you have to give yourself that time to enjoy life, to have time to recuperate, to rest, to re-energize, because activism and advocacy is exhausting. Uh, I speak for myself. I'm
Yeah,
oftentimes exhausted.
I was going to ask you, first of all, that's very kind of you to say, and I appreciate it. And I was going to ask you about that, this notion of how do you switch off? Because I know for me, I was having this conversation with someone yesterday, is that I feel very guilty if I am switching off, if I'm not reading every article and listening to every podcast about Israel now and plus plus, you know? So how
Right.
do you switch off? And what's your advice for those of us that always feel like we need to be on, yet we do have to switch off?
I often refer to it as being an athlete of life. An athlete has to train and practice and run drills and compete and get onto the playing field or the arena or wherever the sport happens. In my case, I'm an avid snow skier, and that's to be up on the mountains. But I have to practice and prepare myself for it and then do the sport. Um, and athletes of life also need to have their coaches, their trainers, their therapists, a whole team of people to work with them. And that's just like our lives. We cannot only do the sport full time. We cannot only compete full time. Our bodies will wear out. We will become exhausted and we will fail. We need to give ourselves time to rest, to recuperate, to have that physical therapy, psychological therapy, all of that coaching. That's exactly what we have to do. what do I do? Uh, I struggle with it. The struggle is real. It's easier said than done when there's so much to do and so much that I'm involved in, so much that I'm asked to be involved in. And when people reach out to me for help and organizations reach out for help, how do I say no? I struggle with that. So I've been finding ways to make sure that I have better sleep, which doesn't always happen, but I know that I try. I know that I try to have healthier sleep. I meditate. I practice yoga. In the winter, I love to ski. So I try to make sure that I can get up onto that mountain, even if I feel guilty, saying, how dare I ski while there are people who are fighting for our people and fighting for our existence right now? And it's understanding that I am a mere human being. We are all people. We need to give ourselves that time to recuperate. Again, easier said than done, because I've been very exhausted this whole time. I've seen burnout on the horizon. And when I really recognized that, I said, whoa, I need to slow it down and give myself time to strengthen myself and rejuvenate myself.
I like that. Well, listen, I want to switch gears now and talk a little bit about Hollywood, of which
Oh
you
boy.
of which you know a thing or two about, my friend. And you know, I'd like to start by asking you about that Jonathan Glazer comment. Of course, the director of Zone of Interest, who said he refuted his Jewishness. Two parts to you that I'd like you to respond to. The first is, what did you first make of that? And the second is, were you as aghast as I think the rest of us were when everyone started applauding in that auditorium? I want to know names. I want to know who was clapping for him, because I will not see a film or any piece of art that is created by those people.
Ay, ay, ay. Throughout this post October 7th world, the things that are happening, I oftentimes say that I am shocked but not surprised.
Mm.
It was shocking to hear what he said. It was shocking to hear the amount of people who applauded him. Uh, but I'm not surprised, because I've been in this Jewish activism space. I've been waving the red flag about the increasing anti Semitism in Hollywood. I've experienced it myself throughout my career as an actor, director, filmmaker, journalist, like throughout entertainment and media. I've seen it, and I wasn't surprised. I think it's a shame to have a Jew so misunderstand the Jewish people and the Jewish plight for existence, representation, and expression. To have a Jew say that, a Jewish person say that, was very disappointing. To have the applause of people who felt justified in their anti-Jewish, anti-Zionist, anti-Israel beliefs because a Jewish person said that is also very disappointing. And these Jewish people who are so misinformed, misadvised, they're empowering those who hate us. They are, I hate to say it, but I'm going to say it. They're like the capos. They're like the people who took steps against the Jewish people at a time that we're fighting for our survival. It is embarrassing. Now, I can criticize so many things about Israel. I can criticize so many leaders and politicians and organizations and organizational leaders and initiatives. It will never make me anti-Israel. I can be upset at something that might be said at a synagogue, but it won't make me against the synagogue. The people who say that they refute their Jewishness or that they're against Israel as a whole are useful idiots who've been manipulated by, primarily these days, by left-leaning, liberal, progressive narratives and by those who have infiltrated the civil rights, social justice, and human rights movements to think that they have to be against Israel. It's a horrible time that we're in, where people are owning our narrative, where people are defining what Zionism is instead of actually looking at what Zionism is all about. Zionism is a progressive movement for indigenous people. It is one of the most successful progressive civil rights, social justice, human rights movements to be learned from and to be admired. Yet there are people who are misrepresenting it. So when Jewish people do that, in order to fit in and in order to gain the applause of other people, it really hurts us. He could have said what he wanted to say in so many other ways. He did not need to refute his Jewishness. He did not need to be against Israel. He could have said, I don't support these policies. I don't support this or that. You know what? I'm a proud American, even though I struggle with so many things in the United States. I was very against what happened on January 6th, the attack on our Capitol. I'm very against people taking away a woman's right to choose what she does with her body. I'm very against numerous people who are in Congress and Senate and the things that they say and the things that they support.
On
It will
both
never
sides.
make me, on both sides, it will never make me anti-America.
Yeah.
The people who allow themselves to be anti-Israel or to refute their Jewishness, it's mind-boggling, and they are sophomoric idiots who are only trying to capture the headlines or only have read the headlines and really don't understand what they're doing. Can you tell that I'm angry about it?
Just slightly. But that's why you're on the program, because we want to hear that voice. We want to hear your perspective and opinion. And during your time in Hollywood, when you faced anti-Semitism, exactly where was it coming from and from whom? And were these, dare I say, or dare I ask, other Jews? Were they people that weren't Jewish? Can you give us a sense of where that was coming from?
I can't tell you how many times as an actor I was told that it started when people told me to change my name because my name isn't mainstream enough. And then I received notes and comments saying that I'm either too Jewish or not Jewish enough, or that I don't look Jewish, or that I don't act Jewish enough in order to have a Jewish part. Or where, like, I had 5 callbacks and test shoots for a significant role in a production. And the notes that I received through my then agents at the time were the casting directors and the producers said that they loved me, they love everything I do, they love my acting, compliments, but can I look at the role again and then come back to the next test shoot and do it more Jewish?
And what does that mean?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I told my agent at the time, I said, shame on you for giving me this note. That's a ridiculous note to give someone. Like, what do they want? Do they want me to come and talk like this? Is that more Jewish? Or do they want me to be more Israeli? Like, is this more Jewish? Or like, what is more Jewish? What does that mean? So I received comments like that as an actor. I've also received, I had a producer who I worked with for a while, and she would always refer to me as, oh, that's Yuval. That's that funny Jewish actor director, that Jewish director, that Jewish, like, she always referred to me as a Jew first. And it was a little strange as opposed to just talking about me, my approach, my work. And on one hand, yeah, I'm demonstratively Jewish. I love my Jewishness, but is that the first thing that you need to talk about? Does that mean all of my art and creativity and creations are Jewish art and Jewish creations? So I'd hear stuff like that. And then the challenges of Jewish representation in Hollywood were expressed to me and shared with me from other actors, directors, and writers. where it was perfectly acceptable within Hollywood and continues to be to make Jewish jokes, to laugh at Jews, to make Jews the punchline. But that would never be the case when it was about people of color, refugees, Muslim people, LGBTQ people, women. So it's still acceptable to make fun of Jews when it's not acceptable to make fun of other people and other identities.
I agree with you on that. Oftentimes I'll see a movie or a sitcom or whatever it is, and there's always that one Jewish reference or that one Jewish joke. And I'm like, the whole piece does not stand on that. Why did you have to insert that in just to get a cheap laugh?
That's what it is. It's a cheap laugh. I think it's maybe Jews had something to do with it because we're a funny people and we have laughed at our own existence and our own troubles so much as a defense mechanism,
Mhm.
as a survival mechanism. So maybe other people looked at that and said, "Oh, well, the Jews make Jewish jokes, so we should be able to do so as well." And the difference is, one, who is making the Jewish joke? Sure. But here's the important one. How are they making the Jewish joke and what is their intention?
Yeah, I agree.
To make a self deprecating joke, but to still uplift yourself or to still uplift the people about whom the joke is about can be really funny. To make a joke about somebody, an identity, a people, and put them down is not funny and is not acceptable in my
Yuval,
book.
Yuval, at the risk of getting in trouble, I'm going to say that it's like the N word. I hear
Totally.
Black people here on the streets of New York using the N word to one another. If I were to use the N word, you know, it's
Absolutely.
the same
And
thing. And that's what people don't understand.
well, because Black people had to train society to understand what is acceptable and what is not. And
Yeah.
they did a really good job in affecting and influencing society. They said, it was part of the Black is Beautiful movement, saying, we are a beautiful people. We can speak about ourselves and uplift ourselves. You cannot tell us who we are and how we are. We will tell you who we are and how we are, and you will learn from that. That's what Jewish people need to do as well. It's what the LGBTQ movement has done also very successfully, and what the women's movement has and the feminist movement have done successfully. Jewish people need to do this too.
Yeah, we're going to talk about the LGBTQ community in just a sec, but I want to wind down this part of our conversation on Hollywood and ask you what you make of boycotts. Because for me, and I'm talking about Jewish people boycotting other people's work, because when I see, for example, this was years ago, Emma Thompson, for example, I remember signed a letter saying that she didn't want the Habima Theater performing at a Shakespeare festival in the United Kingdom. And I remember, Javier Bardem and Penelope Cruz at the time, and Pedro Almodovar, and all these others were also signing all of these letters, saying that they didn't want Israeli performers or, troops from Israel performing, et cetera, or films from Israel being held at film festivals. And so since then, I'm calling out Emma Thompson, for example, and every time she's in something, I will not go see that film. Every time Mark Ruffalo is in something, I refuse to see anything that expletive is in. Okay. And to our editors, you don't have to bleep anything out because I didn't say the word that I wanted to say about Mark Ruffalo. The point being is, I want to boycott that because I don't want to give one penny of my money to those artists, those so-called artists. And I'm going to call them so-called artists. And I'm just wondering if you think that, am I alone in that? How, you as a performer and as an artist and as an actor, where do you fall on that? Because art is art, yet do we have to support someone's art if we don't believe in their beliefs? Yeah.
You don't have to support anyone's art if you don't like their art
Mhm.
and if you don't believe in their beliefs. And I think that as activists who are educators who try to educate and inform people as part of our activism, I actually think we have a duty to inform other people as to what people say and what people do and what their beliefs are. I used to struggle with people in the entertainment industry using their platforms to speak about socio-political issues. And then I recognized that, wow, this is great. If you have a platform and you care about something, absolutely use your platform, speak about it, take action, use your successes that you've achieved in other career paths towards the advocacy and activism initiatives that you believe in and the values you believe in. But there are consequences to that. If you are an anti-Semite, if you are anti-Israel, anti-Zionist, if you are breaking away from the values that you claim to believe in and you speak openly about it, there are consequences. I don't believe in cancel culture. I do believe in consequence culture. And that is,
Well, what's the difference?
well, cancel culture is to say you believe this, this, and this, or you are this and this. You are canceled. You have no right to exist. You have no right to work. You have no right to say, do whatever it is you want to do. I do believe in freedom of speech. I do want people to succeed and do well if they are good people and I appreciate what they're doing. Right? Cancel culture defined, canceling somebody because you don't agree with them, don't like them. Consequence culture. There are consequences and should be consequences for what Mark Ruffalo says or what Susan Sarandon says or what so many different people in the
Cynthia
Hollywood.
Nixon.
Cynthia Nixon. What a hypocrite. I mean, just
Yeah.
things when they say and do things, there should be consequences, especially if attention has been called that they are breaking away from the values that they claim to support. When the values that they claim to support include all of these people but do not include Jewish people, isn't that anti-Semitism? Isn't that
Yeah.
anti-Jewish? And when they talk about being anti-Zionist, how can you be against a movement for the self-actualization of a people with social and political representation? That's what Zionism is all about. They'll support the self-actualization of so many other people, but they don't support it about Jewish people. So there
And
should be consequences.
and that's a really nice jumping off point to talk about the LGBTQ community. And you have, gays for Gaza, you have queers for Palestine, and of course you are an activist within that larger community. And so I'm just sort of opening up that conversation for you to share anything that you'd like about that.
What I've seen happening within the LGBTQ movement, and I refer to it as a movement more than I refer to it as a community, because so many factions within the LGBTQ community have proven to me that we are not a community. We're not a supportive community, but there is a movement about LGBTQIA plus causes and initiatives. Within the LGBTQ movement, there are very vocal factions that are anti-Semitic, that are anti-Jewish, that are anti-Israel. I've seen them for years. I've been targeted by these factions and these organizations for years,
So it's
very
nothing new,
actively
really.
since 2018. No, since 2018, it started to get very intense for me by these Queers for Palestine and BDS activists within the LGBTQ community. And once again, it makes no sense to me because they're breaking away from the LGBTQ values that our movement is fighting for. Our LGBTQ values are about inclusion, acceptance, identity, creating a safe space for people, allowing people to explore the full potential of human existence and experience. But when you exclude certain people from those values, that says something about you. And the fact that they exclude Jewish people from these values says something about them. We've seen these factions increasing for many years, and October 7th has given them a platform and a microphone and justification for their anti-Jewish belief systems.
When you have engaged with those Jew haters from the LGBTQ community, and you talk to them about the reality of, fellow members of the LGBTQ community in Gaza, in
Correct.
the West Bank, and, in Iran, for example, and the fates that they have. What's been their response?
Many times people respond with emotions, and that's part of human nature. When they don't know the facts, when they don't have the information, they will use their emotions to mask their lack of knowledge. You know what? I've been very active in helping rescue LGBTQ people and women out of dangerous and life-threatening situations internationally. The vast majority of those countries from which we're trying to rescue these people are countries that follow and practice Sharia law, are Muslim countries. I've helped Palestinian LGBTQ people flee and achieve asylum in Israel. I've collaborated with organizations that this is their mission. As an Israeli American gay queer man, when I'm in Israel, the way I'm able to leave a building is by taking the stairs or an elevator. The way an LGBTQ person leaves a building in the Muslim world primarily is by being thrown off of a building. There's a huge difference. Homosexuality is criminalized, is punishable by death, is justified with families committing honor killings, killing their own relatives for the honor of their family because they want to eliminate homosexuals from society. How are LGBTQ people supporting the countries, the governments, the ruling parties that are completely against LGBTQ people? I fight for values. I support, as I said it, democratic values, LGBTQ rights, women's rights, freedom of religion, equal access to education, healthcare, all of these things. I will support the governments and the ruling parties that support those things. I will not support the governments and the ruling parties that are against all of those things. How are LGBTQ people against Israel, and how are they supportive of Hamas, of Hezbollah, of Iran? It makes no sense.
So when you're speaking to these people and they're emoting back to you, do they ever say, wow, Yuval, you may have a point. I need to investigate this further?
Yes. Sometimes they actually say that. Sometimes they say, I hear what you're saying. I don't have as much information as you have, Yuval. I will look into it. Or they'll say, oh, thank you for enlightening me. Most of the time, they don't say that. Most of the time, they try to cancel me or get very upset with me for being able to be in an argument with them without ever raising my voice, without ever losing my cool, because I can give them facts and numbers and statistics. It's a very disappointing and challenging thing, and it makes me embarrassed to see how much safe space the LGBTQ community has given supposed LGBTQ people who are not supporting LGBTQ rights internationally. LGBTQ people were slaughtered and murdered on October 7th, were targeted on October 7th, along with other Israelis, along with other foreign nationals who were there, people who were freely expressing who they are and how they choose to present themselves, for example, at the Nova Festival. LGBTQ people need to support anybody who is trying to openly and freely express themselves, and needs to be against anybody who's trying to eradicate our ability to experience the full human existence.
Well, listen, even if you change the minds or educate a handful of people, there's a ripple effect.
I hope
So,
so.
so really, kol hakavod, really congratulations to you for doing that. Just a couple of other bases before we wrap. The hostages. I want to bring them up because, within all of this, I think we can't forget the hostages and their families and what they're going through. And it's absolutely unthinkable to think that these people are suffering. And I know that you, for example, knew at least one person, one woman that was a hostage, and the horrors that she experienced. And I just want you to reflect and just share anything that you want to vis-a-vis the hostages. And certainly you've been in Israel, as we said, on and off for the last several months. And so you're aware of the plight of the hostages and their families, and just really opening the floor for you to share anything that you would like.
The way I approach my Jewish activism and support of Israel uh, has created opportunities for me to go to places and to meet with people that maybe most people don't have that immediate access
Mhm.
or the invitations. And sometimes I'm surprised by it, but I also very much respect it and honor it. I've been invited to meet with numerous former hostages, with families of existing hostages, with loved ones of those who were murdered and slaughtered and raped on October 7th, with wounded soldiers who were wounded trying to fight for our existence. And the very intimate conversations and stories that they shared, one, are very traumatizing for me, even though I'm not the one who experienced what they went through. And when I think about how affected I am by their stories, it makes me want to be as sensitive and vulnerable and permeable and strong and courageous, and do whatever I can to support them, to support the survivors, to support the wounded heroes, to support the loved ones of those who were killed, those who were held hostage and released, those who are still held hostage, and those who we still don't know what happened to them. The stories that were shared with me in very off the record conversations are harrowing feats of survival, including from the people I know who were held hostage and released, and who saw what happened to hostages who have not yet been released. We have to always talk about the hostages. We always need to chant, bring them home. We always need to empower our leaders, our elected officials, our politicians, our military, and media to speak about them, to take action to liberate them from captivity. It's a terrible terrible thing, and we
Yeah.
cannot just move on in life without acknowledging those who are not able to move on.
Yeah. And to give support to the families. And so the families know that we are behind them and that we're with them. I think
We
it's
we
big.
know that
Yeah.
hostages, both women and men, uh, have been repeatedly raped and gang raped. We know that the women who were raped, some of them are already pregnant. What are they going to do? There's a hostage I know of who is a closeted gay man whose partner is also closeted, and his partner is trying to fight for the liberation uh, of his loved one. And we know what has been happening to the hostages. There are stories like that. There are stories of young girls, underage girls, who were gang raped every day. The things my friend told me about what happened to her and what she saw happening to other women and men, and things that were going on. And to know that there are protests across the United States and Canada and the UK and the Western world where people are supporting Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad and Hezbollah and Iran and Gaza civilians as well, who did atrocious things. It makes me so angry that people around the world are justifying terrorism. There is no justification for rape. There is no justification for inhumane activity. And we are losing the battle of information and how we share facts. That's the problem on social media. We are losing these algorithms. It's why everybody needs to not just be active themselves on social media, even if it's with a private account with just your family and friends, or a very public account, or at least go on social media and click like and share and follow of all of the Jewish activists and our allies who you support. We're dealing with a hard thing. So I proudly want to be demonstratively Jewish, and I wear all of this jewelry around my neck. I have the Bring Them Home medallion, which, as you do as well, and it serves as a reminder of what our fight is for. Our fight is for the existence of the Jewish people and for Israel. Our fight is also for the existence of these individuals, the people who are still being held in torturous existence. And
it's hell what they're going through.
It's hell.
I can't imagine, and sometimes I don't even want to think about it because you want to think about it, but of course you don't want to think about it, if that makes sense, because it is beyond, beyond, beyond hell. And we're living in 2024, and this kind of thing is even beyond what happened in the Dark Ages. I mean, this is just
how do the
12
parents
degrees. Yeah. It's 12 degrees below savagery is what it is.
It is. It's absolute barbaric savagery. Yeah. It is inhumane.
It's inhumane. Yeah.
It's against humanity.
Yeah, these are
rape and chop people's heads off and to cut their genitals off, yeah, and to torture them and to do the things that they did to other human beings merely because they're Jewish people, merely because they're Israelis, merely because they are not Islamists. Like, if somebody doesn't practice religion like you, that doesn't mean that that person deserves to die.
Yeah.
And those of us who believe in human rights, civil rights, social justice, equal rights should completely be against anybody who is trying to eradicate others.
Well, you know what, Yuval, karma's a bitch, as they say.
I hope so, but karma will only be a bitch if all of us become activists.
Yeah, I agree. And that's what I was going to say, but it has to manifest itself by all of us really turning the tide and becoming activists indeed. So when are you going back to Israel? Do you have plans?
Yes, I'm likely going to be there at some point in May. I'm figuring a few things out. I have numerous speaking engagements and advocacy initiatives across the US and in Canada. So I'm juggling my travel schedule. And my neck continuously gets heavier with all this jewelry, but it makes me kind of happy to wear it and comforted to wear these different items.
And I'm sure you get stopped at the airport, don't you? Or you have to take that off before you go through the metal detectors.
I actually haven't needed to take it off, which is surprising.
What a talisman all that is then.
It is a talisman. I was surprised. Actually, you know what? I would sometimes take off a bunch of stuff and leave the bare minimum, but I guess jewelry is allowed now.
I guess.
I just got these items recently, which I love. It's from Shock Jewels, SHOK Jewels. It was a gift that was sent to me because I was speaking in Vancouver, and the woman who designed it noticed that while I was speaking, I kept touching the Magen David, and she noticed that it was some sort of habit that I've developed when speaking about the things that are challenging or traumatizing, that I actually touch the Magen David as to empower myself somehow. So she sent me these items.
It's also a way of soothing yourself. You know, oftentimes when people do that, when they touch their arm, etc., it's a soothing mechanism. And we should share with our listeners that are listening just via podcast is that Yuval showed me some beautiful bracelets that were sent to him as a gift. Well, listen, as we wind down the conversation right now, and really on a much lighter note, Yuval, I do want you to talk about Capote versus the Swans, the Hulu series that you were a part of.
Right.
It has been here in New York City. You can't walk 3 steps without seeing an ad for it. And you know, you turn on the TV and you see it as well. I have not seen it yet, just because I just got back from an extended trip. And I want to tell you, I cannot wait to see it. And so share with our listeners that might not be familiar with it, what it's all about and your role with it. How'd you get the role and what you love most about being in that series?
It's an exciting thing and also a weird thing to live this life of an actor filmmaker, journalist, and activist, right? It's a lot of different hats to wear. So this show, it's a Ryan Murphy production directed by Gus Van Sant. We filmed it in 2022 and 2023, long before October 7th.
Yeah.
And it was an amazing experience to be part of this cast and to be around such great, incredible actors. I mean,
These are
and
real
directors.
A-listers.
These
Share who's in the
uh,
cast.
Diane Lane, Tom Hollander, Chloe Sevigny, Callista Flockhart, Molly Ringwald, Demi Moore. I mean, this incredible, wonderful cast. And it was amazing to just work with them, to be around them.
And share the premise. Who you played, and then share the premise.
So the premise is about Truman Capote and his swans, his nearest and dearest friends, the uber elite socialites of New York City and of New York at the time, and how he eventually broke their confidence and wrote a tell-all about all of the stories that they shared and started to publish and share their stories. I played one of the Maisel brothers, the two documentarians who created a documentary about Truman Capote and his sharing of these stories. So sometimes people joked on set. They said, "Wow, Yuval, it's not much of a stretch for you. You're a Jewish documentary filmmaker who's playing a Jewish documentary filmmaker." And I'm like, yeah, no, I get it. You know, so it was a unique role to play, especially in one of the episodes, which was filmed as if we were filming the documentary. So the way I was in every scene, not necessarily seen in every scene, but interacted with all of the characters, it was a weird role to play for sure, because I wasn't on camera as much as I would have loved to be, but yet I was in almost every scene with each of the cast members. It's a pretty cool production, and was an amazing role to just have all this dialogue and experience with these incredible actors.
Yeah, and just one final thing. I mean, from what I've seen, the trailers, it was really beautifully shot.
Amazing. Yeah. The whole crew, the cinematographer, the attention to detail was above and beyond.
Such a period piece. And at that time, it was so glamorous to be in New York City and to be part of that environment. Let alone
the black and white ball, which was recreated. That was amazing. It was amazing to be, what was I, number 12, number 13 on the call sheet with all of these incredible actors. And then everybody beneath us on the call sheet, or actually, I think that was it on the call sheet. Everybody else were all of these like extras, and to see hundreds and hundreds of extras all over the place recreating the black and white ball, and the costume designers, and oh my gosh, it was spectacular. It was absolutely a spectacular experience.
It's like, I was going to say, it's like having an out-of-body experience when you're in something like that. Yeah.
Now, one of the challenges is this show came out in January 2024. So how to promote my being in this fabulous, amazing production in a post-October 7th world presented me with quite some intense challenges.
How'd you do it?
Well, you know what? My Jewish activism obviously came first. Mm-hmm. I had to talk about about October 7th. I had to talk about my support for Israel, about the fight against terrorism, about the battle to be able to represent who we are and to have the freedom of expression, to be able to create the art we created. I feel like everything is now leaning back towards my Jewish activism. Everything I talk about leans back towards the values I believe in, even if it's a production that had nothing to do with October 7th, that had nothing to do with Jewish activism and identity. But, you know, I'm the vessel that was used. So that's what I talk about.
All right. Well, listen, on that note, we're going to leave it right there. And let me just say the world needs more Yuval Davids. And so we want to thank this Yuval David, that it's the other end of the Zoom call, for joining us for our second chat here on IsraelCast. I know it's not going to be our last one. We look forward to having you back. Yuval, thanks so much for joining us.
Stephen, thank you for everything you do. The world needs more Stephen Shalowitzes as well. I really admire you and appreciate you.
All right, I appreciate that. And we'll have info about Yuval on the show notes page of this episode on our website, jnf.org/IsraelCast. And we do release new episodes of the show every other Wednesday. Mark your calendars. I know you're not going to want to miss any of them. And we even have a few surprises to throw in apart from those every other Wednesday episodes. And just so you do never miss an episode, subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. It's so easy. Simply search for IsraelCast. And as I said at the top of the show, don't forget to rate and review us, because that really helps with our rankings, which in turn make it easier for more people around the world to find us and to hear from people like Yuval David. Now, you can always enjoy the show by visiting us at our website as well. Once again, it's jnf.org/IsraelCast. Now, it takes a homo shop to put IsraelCast together. For that, we thank Vivian Grossman, Dara Shapiro, JD Krebs, and Ellie Cadron. Our editors are Jay Rothman and James Casada from across town at Miratone Studios, right here in the very heart of New York City. And the music that you hear at the top until the program is titled My Eden. It's by the very talented Rafi Malkiel from his album Water on the Tzaddik label. IsraelCast is powered by Jewish National Fund USA, your voice in Israel. For more info about JNF USA, do visit jnf.org. And if you'd like to write to us with story ideas or just to say hello, I know Yuval would love to hear from you, and so would I. So email us at israelcast@jnf.org. Meantime, I'm Stephen Shalowitz, thanking you for tuning in and looking forward to having you join us on future episodes of IsraelCast.